Hello, everyone, and welcome into the North Georgia Sports Report. Will Cooper, Arthur Mosley bringing it to you on a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully you'll be hearing this by Thursday. Coming out on August the 17th, I'm Will Cooper, joined alongside Arthur Mosley. Art, how are we doing, my friend?
Will, I am doing excellent. If I was any better, I'd have to be twins.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, Will, I mean, it's just so much goodness and joy wrapped up right now. Not that I'm a good person, I'm just feeling good. Right?
I think you are good.
Well,
don't degrade yourself that far.
I appreciate that. I'm just feeling so good.
So good?
Yes, so good. You want to know why?
Why is that?
Because high school football is actually on TV as we record tonight.
It is the Corky Kell going on right now. Of course, a good couple games on tonight.
Not good? This first game's kind of been a little lopsided.
Yes, yeah. North Atlanta taking it to Johns Creek here so far. Hopefully later in the evening, Kell and Parkview play. That'll be a little bit better of a matchup. And then tomorrow, the Forsyth County teams get a crack at it with West and North playing prospective
certainly
teams.
Do. A couple of other games going on. There's a referee shortage, Will. I saw the Battle of Polk County got moved to Thursday night as Cedartown will host Rockmart. And, man, it's getting kicked off. A whole slate of games with a whole cast of characters.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to bringing you the action on Friday night where we will be at the Grizzly Den for the Battle of the Bears, Cambridge and Creekview. We're expecting a full house. Obviously, us two will be there, and then Zach Gross, Dave Garner, Ronnie on the spot. I'm sure that, there may be a Larry Prather sighting out there somewhere.
Well, if we're at Creekview, you know that Larry's going to be lurking around there somewhere.
He's always around.
Yes.
The question is if we can convince him to join us in the booth.
Well, he'll probably, raise up his hands and
guys,
and gosh.
Back when I was at LaGrange, we didn't have podcasts. So I'd love Larry.
You know what? If we could get him up at halftime to give us a little interview, that would be fantastic. I don't know if we'll be able to do it this week. But I would love to. I'd love to get Larry in, and we have to time him. We have to give him a stopwatch.
Yes.
But he tells a great story.
He does.
I mean, he knows how to tell a great story.
That he does.
I think our listeners would enjoy that.
Well, we hope we get to tell you a great story today as we have all 6 county teams in action playing 6 separate teams, and we're excited to go over those. We'll also review the scrimmages a little bit, take them for what they are, and we'll obviously send a little message out to the fans that, if you lost your scrimmage, let's just remember it's a scrimmage. But, of course, we want to remind everybody we will be, again, Creekview, Cambridge, and that will be on Stationhead, the Stationhead app, and stationhead.com, where you can find us there. If you don't know, we've got a whole new slate of features for you. Head over to northgasportsnetwork.com. You'll be able to find all of the things we have for you, including video content, live, our scheduled broadcasts, articles, everything you could possibly want relating to high school football. You'll find it there, and it's much more than it has been in the past. So I hope you all enjoy that and join us along for the ride.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about this format. We had a chance to give it a live test run last week. During the broadcast, we had a great chat feature that you were able to interact with some of our friends throughout the evening and throughout the broadcast. And again, we're excited about a little more functionality and some of the features that we're able to provide to the listeners, and hopefully, again, building out this platform for one purpose, Coop, and that's to spotlight these student athletes in Cherokee County today, exactly right. And then further on down the line, further out, north central Georgia.
Yeah, we're just starting in Cherokee County.
Yes, absolutely,
anyway.
Absolutely.
But all right, well, let's jump into it. Cherokee, we'll just go in alphabetical order.
Sure, why not?
So Creekview fans will have to wait till the end.
Yes, it's our game of the week, so
or we'll get timestamped. That's what normally happens. So no shame in that game. We're fine with the timestamps. Cherokee Creekview was the schedule or the scrimmage. Cherokee lost by 14, but it was tied at 14 when they called off the dogs. Kind of when you went into half, they were down by 7 at that point, and then they were able to add a touchdown, and then obviously they went and tied. Jamison with the 2 touchdown receptions, was very impressed with him. Wyatt Tash is a guy that I want to highlight out of that. He was just the number 1 target for most of the evening for Tanner Savasier. Very impressed with him. Sure-handed tight end. Excited to see his growth. And Tanner Savasier looked great as well. The Cherokee offensive line played decently. Creekview got to him a couple times. I think they got 3 sacks by the end of it. something they'll want to clean up. But all in all, I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Cherokee, and I think the excitement that we saw in the spring scrimmage where they handled Riveridge so well probably carried over into this fall scrimmage, and excited to see what they can do as they'll face Cartersville this week.
Yeah, you mentioned Jamison and Tash looked like two really good receivers there. I'm sure we didn't see the entire arsenal from Coach Burnett in that offense. What they can do, but Savasier looked good even when he was flush from the pocket. I thought he had a good look and was able to keep his eyes down the field, find some of those wide open receivers. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the defense and a young man that Coach Shaw told us about in the preseason show. Wyatt Lucas looked really good at cornerback. He's a scrappy, kind of bulldog, maybe a little bit undersized, but he's going to let you know he's there. And he looked great in coverage last in that scrimmage. I'm really looking forward to seeing who matches up against this week. And I think he's a guy that when we look back at the end of the season, we're like, wow, this kid had a really, really good season. And also J.D. Byrne, a guy that we snubbed on our all-county team last season. And so I'll go ahead and take that pressure, right? Take the pressure from that. I thought J.D. Playing both ways, on the offensive line looked really good, and also as a pass rusher, just a really physical. He gets off the times that snap pretty well and gets out of his stance really well. And those are two guys I think defensively outside of the ones we have mentioned previously. I think if those two guys have a good season, Byrne and then Wyatt Lucas, you go along with Keenan Hunter and then Javon Hobson up there up front. Cherokee, I don't know if they're ready to challenge a team like North Cobb for a home playoff spot, but I do think that's a team that when we look at them this year and look at them against Kennesaw Mountain, I should say, that's a game they should win, and they should not drop those other games against Wheeler. I know we've done our preview show already. So, I'll kind of move forward and look at this game this week that, they've got a tall task in front of them.
Yeah, I think for Cherokee, I want them to play going into week 1 like they played in week 11 and week 10 last season. If they do that, then this will be a Cherokee team that gets into a winning record and into a really favorable playoff position. You mentioned some big names there on defense. Another guy I'd like to highlight is Chase Montgomery. As he goes, that linebacking core goes, as we know in that 3-4 front that they like to play. Those linebackers are super crucial. I think they're still trying to figure out some linebacking positions there. We saw Charlie Dolan. Obviously, that name rings true through the halls of Cherokee High School. Braden Knuckles was a guy that we saw who got some reps with the 1s and the 2s. I really liked him. Definitely going to be shorter and smaller than most of the linebackers you expect, but he's tough, and I always respect that in a good linebacker. And then on the other side of the ball, you mentioned, when it comes to the offensive side, J.D. Byrne working both ways. I agree with you 100%. Having him play, on the offensive line and the defensive line, the concern is his durability and his ability in the fourth quarter to be as effective as he is in the fourth quarter. But if he is, then I think that's such a bolster to both sides of the ball for Cherokee that I think it'll make a big difference. Focusing on this Cartersville game, this was a game they lost 35 points last year, and they're 3-9 head-to-head. Of course, the last win was in 2020. That was an instant classic at Tommy Baker. This one will be at Cartersville. It's just, you look at the schedule and we're talking about how good Cherokee is, and we obviously both started them as our power rankings at number 2. And then you see Cartersville, you open up the schedule against, and you kind of just go, well, dang it, why do we have to do this every year? Obviously, they do it for a reason. I think it's a great step up. Cartersville being in 5A gets you ready for 7A competition. But at the end of the day, it's still Cartersville, and you still have to go play in Cartersville. So for Cherokee, you're kind of I'm not saying they can't win the game, because they certainly can, and I think Cartersville's going to be much different than they were last year. I just don't know what the expectation should be for Warrior fans.
Well, here's you want to know my keys to victory?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. I'm ready to jump right in.
Get it.
Okay. You got to protect the quarterback. You got to protect Tanner Savasier and give him some time to throw. number one. Number two, and it probably should have number two should have been number one. Got to find a way to establish a run game. I don't think this is as stout of a defensive line as historically that we've seen out of Cartersville. They've got a couple of standouts returning in Tay Cochran and Keelan McCarty, but these aren't your prototypical D1 type defensive linemen. Again, now that I say that, they'll probably have like 15 sacks or something like that. On the other side of the ball, Cartersville, by all intents and purposes, will be starting a new quarterback. Gamble has graduated. He's moved on. They've got a couple of really good offensive linemen. Luke Surratt, who I believe is it's escaping me, just committed. And then Malachi Tolliver, I believe, is an preseason all-state selection there. Both those guys go over 6'4", around 300 pounds. And, that's a very good-looking offensive line for Cartersville. And they return their second leading rusher in Christian Lando. So my big key to the game right there is, can Hunter, can Hobson, can Byrne, or whoever else is playing on that side, Montgomery and those other guys, can they find a way to neutralize those big bodies up front for Cartersville? We got a chance to see Christian Lando a little bit last year, and he's a good-looking back. But I think that's those are the keys of victory. If you can find a way to get off the blocks on those guys and make plays in the backfield and not let Lando hurt you deep. The other key is Jamari Bryce. He's the team's leading receiver from a year ago. So I think he's a guy that if you get the ball close to him, he's going to cause you problems. So we mentioned Wyatt Lucas a little bit earlier. Will he be matched up with Jamari Bryce? It might be, if he can step up, I think you give yourself a chance. And again, this is not a down. This is a team of Cartersville. They're a very proud program. Mm-hmm. They made it to the semifinals last year. They know how to win. That's ingrained in that program. But I don't think this is as talented of a team as we've seen in the past.
Well, I told you this off air, and I maintain this. And anybody who doesn't know, if this is your first time on the podcast, I'm about as anti-city school as it gets, so just buckle up because this is going to happen all year. If Cartersville had a position group that they felt was underperforming, they would have gone out and recruited somebody. They would have taken somebody from a surrounding high school.
Sure.
So to me, I agree. I agree with your establishment there, and I think the offensive line is a huge point. And to be honest with you, I don't know exactly how Cherokee's going to navigate that. I think that I think Cherokee's going to have a different philosophy this year, where they're going to have to decide they're going to score points. I think that the days of the 14-7 games, they can't play that way. I think they're going to have to play to 24 points. That's going to be the magic number for them. Now, does that mean that the defense is bad? Not at all. It doesn't mean that in the slightest. I just think that when you're talking about going against two guys who are that size and have that much respect, preseason all-state selections, it makes it so hard to game plan around those guys. There's nothing you can do if the offensive line is bigger. And you can only bring so many blitzes. You can only do so many different things. So at a certain point, you're going to need Cherokee's offense to step up and hope that Cartersville's having a little early season struggle. And again, that's why I go back to my point about Cherokee playing like they did in Week 10. If we see that Cherokee team that played against Kennesaw Mountain, they can beat Cartersville 100%. And as a matter of fact, I would give them more than a fighting chance. But if we see Cherokee that came out and played against Cartersville last year and they really struggled to find any footing at all, I don't really like their chances in this one. So I guess that's my point, is that if you're a Cherokee fan, you have to kind of have the attitude of, let's wait and see what happens and hope that we start with that tenacity that we had in Week 10 and Week 11. If we do, then this is going to be a great season. But again, if they get out slow, is it the end of the world? No, it's why you play all these out-of-region games, and the benefit for Cherokee is they have 6 of them. Mm-hmm. So, to me, it's an okay matchup, but I still stand by the fact that whenever you look at a city school, I've done it a handful of times and said, wow, this team's beatable. And then you get to the game and you go, wow, who's this kid? And you look him up and you said, oh, he played at blank school last year. Interesting. I wonder why he came to Cartersville. So I, of course, say that somewhat kidding, but not always. They typically get them in before the 8th grade program, so it's harder to see.
Sure.
But, all that being
there's
said,
a little bit of truth in all sarcasm, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're Buford, then you just bring in whoever you want,
across
whenever
the country,
you want.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different world over there.
Not telling anybody something they don't know. But, I maintain that again. We said it last year, so we'll stick with it. Power rankings at the end of this, I put Cherokee at 2. I mean, the scrimmage didn't change anything in my mind. Didn't change in my mind for anybody. As a matter of fact, I thought the scrimmage was a very good look for Cherokee, and I like what I saw out of them and don't have any reason not to put faith in them moving forward.
Yeah, one of the things in that scrimmage that we didn't talk about is even some of some of those first few drives were in fits and starts, but Cherokee held the ball. Their time of possession was pretty good, and they were able to sustain drives.
Yeah.
Against Creekview's defense did wake up. Midway through that first quarter, late in the first quarter, they were able to sustain drives, and they will have to do that on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, Cartersville's not a team that you're going to be able to get in those fits and starts. You're
Right.
going to have to establish that early. And I think that's the key, is that Cherokee's going to have to be a fast-starting team. And I think it starts on the offensive side of the ball, and then the defense will just have to do enough to protect that lead, which, again, Cherokee's been a very interesting conversation topic, because have they been a team since, 2018 that's just been world beaters? Not necessarily. But across the board, they've been very consistent with what they do, and they're consistently good. And I think that that's going to continue this year. I don't see them, again, we talked about the playoff record. I don't see that going away. And I know this is super immature, way early in the season for this. But I'm just saying that I think that when you consider where they line up against a team like Cartersville, it's all about perspective.
It is. And I think this is a great, again, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but as you look at your schedule and trying to get you prepared for region play, hey, why not go ahead and measure yourself against one of the best in North Central Georgia?
Yeah.
And I think this has been a great matchup. And these schools, not many miles separate these schools.
No.
It's just as easy to get to Cartersville as it is to get to North Cobb, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Or even Woodstock.
Right.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that'll be a good matchup, again, that at Cartersville. So any Cherokee fans that want to make the trip over to Cartersville, if you've never been, beautiful stadium. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Weinman Stadium is a great place to watch a football game. I would say the fans are nice. I've never been on the Cartersville side. I've always been on the visitor side when I've gone to watch a game over there. But it's a great facility out there in Cartersville, and I would say the folks are friendly, the ones I've kind of bumped into over there. But
yeah. So, of course, if you can make it out, certainly do. If not, stay with us on Friday night. We'll keep you updated on all those scores, and we have a dedicated scorekeeper this week.
Yes, we do.
We'll be able to provide you immediate updates. But just come hang out with us if you're not able to make it, and that'll be a lot of fun. So, time for the Etowah Eagles portion of the show. Art, last week was a little bit of an odd game, I guess is the best way to put it. Just a scrimmage again, but Etowah 6, Sprayberry 17. Etowah did score the 6 with their starters. Mahoney had a rushing touchdown kind of on a scramble play.
Mm-hmm.
Odd. Just odd is the best way to put it. Don't want to focus on the scrimmage too much, obviously, but for Etowah, we didn't expect them to only score 6, but we also didn't really expect them to hold teams to, I think it was 6-7 at the end of the first half, so really didn't expect them to hold teams to 7 points. So going into week 1, I'm not really sure what to make out of that scrimmage. Sometimes you just got to take them and throw them in the trash and see what happens week 1.
Well, only surrendering 7 points to Sprayberry, a team that averaged, I don't have their average up, but I think they were well over 20 points a game last season. Maybe that's early credit to new defensive coordinator Coach Smith coming over. His son, is Gabriel Smith, the linebacker for the Eagles, who came over with him by way of Allatoona, So yeah, again, Coop, you mentioned it, and you think about a scrimmage, and you don't want to dive too deep in, and some things might be alarming, if you can't put points on the board. But I think we know what we expect out of Etowah, and are they going to run 25 quarterback draws with Mahoney in a scrimmage? Probably not.
Right.
They might have some things they're going in that they want to take a look at. We know where Etowah's had success, and conversely, as Coach Kemper mentioned in the pregame show, people are going to be game planning for Xavier, or XE as they call him over there at Eagle Mountain, and so that'll be a next step for him, I think, in his ability as a quarterback and as a playmaker. And that staff as well, how do they adjust to how people are going to defend him? Because I think Creekview kind of had a game plan. Sequoia had a game plan. We're able to kind of bottle them up a little bit, and even River Ridge to an extent. I tell you what, you better have some fast linebackers that don't allow him to break contain or defensive ends for that matter and force him back in the middle. But he's one of these guys we talk about, that top end speed. It does not take him long to get there, and that's what makes Mahoney one of the most exciting players in the county. Again, and I'd even go as far as to say North Central Georgia.
Yeah, one of the guys that we want to highlight is Malone Pesquera, who really kind of was used as a utility man in there. Definitely a flex play is what you would call him. Had a couple of option pitches that he picked up in the game. That was I've always liked that in that playbook. I think it plays well. We obviously know Reese Weir, the Buffalo. He had a couple of good carries in there. The bell cow for that Etowah offense, and the rest of that wide receiver core was very impressive. You mentioned Sprayberry last year averaged 33.7 points per game. They bring back Kamari Nix, who I assume was the quarterback in the scrimmage, and he racked up over 1,400 passing yards and 1,000 rushing yards. So 2,400 total yards coming back. That's a big deal. So, Etowah wasn't facing a slouch at all. So, again, that defense might be very, very impressive. But, again, it's scrimmage. You don't know if they were not calling their top plays. They had worked out some plays they wanted to test. Hard to say. But at the end of the day, it was just shocking, I think, from the outside looking in as somebody that, put Etowah at number 3 in the power ranking. It was something I didn't really expect to see. But I think there's also good to be taken away from it again when that defense holds a Sprayberry team that averaged over 30 points a game last year to 7.5. I can live with that. And I think the offense will pick back up. They're just too talented to score 6.5 points. That's just not what they're going to average.
Sure. And in Coop, I think we saw that even with in the Creekview Cherokee scrimmage. It took a little while for those teams to get settled in and put some points on the board. And once they do, I think, when the lights are on this Friday night, I don't think they're going to be holding back anything, No. And again, allowing 7 points in that first half, I think that's a positive sign for Etowah, a team that, gave up 28 points a game last year, so they're moving in the right direction. If you're giving up 7.5, that's pretty good. I mean, again, considering you've got a couple of players that can score lightning quick, and like you mentioned, with that little option pass play they run, very difficult to defend. With
a lot of assignment football.
Yes. So.
Yeah, moving into the game this Friday, they'll be hosting Lassiter. They won this game 25-14 last year. These teams have played a lot, former region opponents, 15-11 head-to-head, with Etowah leading that by 4. Lassiter last won this matchup in 2013, so Etowah hoping they can move that streak to 10 years. And I think it's possible. I think Lassiter is going to be much different than last year. Lassiter was kind of a team that, looked okay for a while and then kind of really veered off at the end. I think that this is a game that Etowah could really use as a momentum builder moving forward.
Yeah, Lassiter lost a lot of pieces, and starting off with their starting quarterback, Bryson Harrison, who was a dual threat guy, lost a lot of their production at running back as well. So they're going to be under the gun. It looks like Levi Munt is going to be the guy who's going to start off at quarterback. And he was also their team's leading rusher as well with 48 yards, leading returning rusher from that team a year ago. And so they're going to have a lot of questions to answer. And then, he got a receiver coming back, Shaw Mixon, and even Sabian Thigpen, a couple of guys coming back that will provide you with a little bit of experience. Mixon with eight catches for 144 yards and a touchdown last year, but it's not. These aren't guys coming back with double-digit receptions in games or double-digit 30, 40, 50 balls they caught. So there's going to be a lot of growing pains over there for Lassiter. Conversely, I think they might be in a situation that Etowah was in a couple years ago, just with the turnover there, as Coach Tome tries to put together this football team and kind of get Lassiter back to some of their glory days and glory years. And I think Etowah, they're two teams right now moving in different directions. Etowah has had that season last year where they figured out they knew how to win a ball game.
Right.
And then figured out they had some really exciting pieces. And now it's, can they put that together in the preseason or pre-region, schedule, and then on in region play. And again, I think Etowah's just got more playmakers this season than does Lassiter.
I agree, and I think Etowah is going to be a much improved defense over last year as well. Although it's hard to improve, you gave up 14 points last year. Kind of hard to argue with that. But I think the thing about that 25-14 win last year that Etowah fans probably remember, but other people in the county probably don't, is how shocking that win was. We were going into this, and Etowah had gone 1-9 2 years in a row,
right?
And we're thinking, all right, what are they going to do? They're going to, a good season for them would be 4-6,
Mm-hmm.
and next thing you know, they come out of the gate and
4-0,
bang,
right?
4-0, and we're sitting there like, hold on, and they were doing it in convincing fashion.
Sure.
So this was a game last year that was very, very, very exciting for Etowah fans. I hope it is equally. Again, I think the defense and offense is gonna be something to watch. I think Etowah fans are going to have plenty to keep an eye on. Especially you mentioned the defensive staff change at Etowah. That'll be fun to watch. And then the offensive side, they didn't lose a whole lot from last year. So I think it's just the growth of those young men and working together as a team. And then the offensive line around Tate Nelms becomes the question. They're going to have a few options on the offensive line. I don't think it's their main concern, but I think that it's something that if they could improve on from last year just a little bit, which would be difficult, but if they could improve on it from last year, you would feel a lot better about the Eagles.
Absolutely, and I think they're sitting pretty with this game against Lassiter, and I don't want to say anything's in the bag yet, but this is a game that we expect them to win handily, and I think at that point you're like, get your guys some work, and go ahead and seal that victory as early as possible, and turn your attention to the week after and get maybe some of your second and third string guys some reps.
Yeah, I would think that's the goal, hopefully, at least.
Right. Win it first, right?
Right. This game at Eagle Mountain, so hopefully all the Etowah fans can go out and listen to it, or enjoy it, I should say. If you're not able to be there, make sure you tune in and join us on the Station Head app. We'll be going over the scores at halftime and postgame, and we also have a dedicated scorekeeper this week, so Dave Garner will be able to keep you updated on that score all night long.
Yeah, all night. We'll just have to keep feeding him some peace teas.
Keep him fired up. Time for a little talk about the River Ridge Knights coming into this one. A big win last Friday against Wheeler. 37-13 was the final, 30-6 at the half. Interesting note, Ethan Spector was lights out throwing the ball to a handful of different targets. Nick Bryant, Thomas Thompson, and then, of course, the Swiss Army knife, as you call him, Isaiah Coughlin. Really impressed with the offense. Of course, the defense had something to say, only giving up 6 points and a half. That'll work every day of the week. But I think at the end of the day, you kind of look at Wheeler, and we think they're down this year. So excited to see what they can do coming up this week against Hillgrove.
Yeah, we think they're down. That's a scrimmage that we had a chance to take in last season, and Wheeler kind of caught us by surprise. We saw Josiah Allen. We said, wow, this is a big bruising back. Can cause some trouble. They had a couple pretty good offensive linemen, but Holden Wheeler, and I didn't go back and watch the film, so I'm not going to speak too much on this on Wheeler's end, but holding them to 6 points in that first half, whether or not Allen played or not, was impressive. And I'll go back to something that Coach Collins said. We kind of chuckled and laughed when we interviewed him in the preseason show as we asked him about his concerns about his defensive line. He's like, "Hey, I'm having trouble keeping him out of my backfield, so I don't know what you guys are talking about." But so again, maybe part and parcel that those guys are up to the task this season and holding a Wheeler team that, again, like you mentioned, might be a little down, but River Ridge went out and did exactly what they needed to do. Ethan Spector, in my opinion, has probably got the biggest arm in the county. I know that's debatable. I'm sure that a couple other coaches in the county might disagree with me on that, and that's everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm impartial, Coop.
That's true.
I don't. So, but I think when it's all said and done, we look back on this season, and he's just a junior this season, so he'll have much like many other quarterbacks in the county, young quarterbacks. So they did all this without a guy who we believe will lead them in receiving, Grant Hollier. He did not play, sidelined this week, and we assume he'll be back sooner rather than later to help bolster that receiving crew. But I think it was a bright spot for River Ridge. They did it. They went out, did what they needed to do, racked up, got comfortable with that offense and Coach Brown's system, and they're ready to rock and roll here in week 1 against Hillgrove. Yeah,
you mentioned that Hillgrove team. They'll be heading to Hillgrove to play this one. A 27-14 win last year for River Ridge, the only time they had played before, so River Ridge 1-0 in that series. I think that this is going to be another one of those. I think River Ridge will win by more than 13 this year, I would say. The thing about Hillgrove is that you kind of have some recency bias, I guess. I do from when I first started covering high school football. They were a really good team. And then you look at their record over the last 2-3 years, and you kind of go, it's Hillgrove. So I don't know where they'll be exactly. I would just say that River Ridge probably looked a little better than I thought they did. Especially, I know there were a lot of concerns, even between you and I, after the spring scrimmage against Cherokee, which, again, it's a spring scrimmage. You got to take all that under consideration. But it still was not a great look. So turning around and really beating a good Wheeler team, or at least a good running the ball Wheeler team, was good to see. So moving into Hillgrove, I don't exactly know what we'll see. I think the things that you're going to want to look for are offensive line play. We know John Fletcher. We know Daniel Green on the offensive line. Who are the other guys around those two? And then on the defensive side, I think the defensive line, we've kind of addressed those concerns with Coach Collins on the preseason show. Maybe the secondary, if you want to pick out a group that you would like to keep an eye on, I'd like to see the secondary and see how they've improved. I know Revis McLaren was on one side, and then I believe Andrew Hand's playing safety now primarily instead of on the offensive side of the ball. So that would be some benefits there. But other than that, I think River Ridge is looking at a pretty good schedule here. I think it's a pretty good win if they can pull it off. I would say that they're pretty heavy favored going into this one. But again, you never know what Hillgrove's going to come up with. They're in that pocket where there's a lot of talent that can come out.
Yeah, certainly are playing a tough region over there with the resurgent McEachern team that actually Hillgrove beat last season. North Paulding Marriott also in that region, Harrison as well. Coop, you mentioned the River Ridge secondary, and I think that's a great question because Hillgrove does return starting quarterback Torrin Wilkins, who threw for over 1,600 yards, 12 TDs, did throw 10 picks last season. He's also got two pretty good receivers coming back in Jeremiah Valdry and Jonathan Owusu. Those guys both together combined for about 58 receptions and just under 680 yards, just over 680 yards receiving. So rushing, you're probably looking at Madden Brazil. He's their leading returning rusher, but only tallying about 275 yards last season. So not necessarily a ground and pound team. They're probably going to look to throw it in the air with Wilkins. He's a little bit of a mobile quarterback as well, so that might give River Ridge some trouble. Opposite that, on the defensive side of the ball, they do return their top tackler, Braylon Hansborough. He had 97 total tackles from a year ago, but I do think they're also missing some pieces off of that defense, including a guy like Tyler Green, and then Tyler Green. I'm sorry, in the secondary. So Hillgrove, not a pushover, not a slouch. I think they'll certainly present some different challenges for River Ridge than Wheeler did, but I'm not going to be surprised. I've got River Ridge as a favorite because of their ability to put points on the board and what I think is a pretty good defense over there.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see if River Ridge's philosophy is similar to 2020, which I know is like a dog whistle for fans over there. But, I'll be interested to see if they're having the motto of we're just going to outscore everybody and, whatever happens, happens, or if they're going to be one of those that is going to be a more balanced team. I think it remains to be seen. I think an interesting note in this game last year is that they were still back and forth with the quarterbacks. Isaiah Coughlin, threw the ball 10 times last year. He did have 94 yards and a touchdown pass and a 71-yard long. Obviously, we know now that Ethan Spector has solidified himself as that quarterback. I think that may change things a little bit. And then, looking down the rest of it, I think the box score says a lot. They gave up 115 yards through the air, but 3 interceptions. And I think that's a formula for winning, obviously. They held Hillgrove to 47 rushing yards. So, for me, I think you're just kind of looking for more of the same that you saw last year. Maybe some good play across the board, I think, would be key. And hopefully you can find a way to, win by more than 13. I say is a pretty good win there. So, for me, I don't really worry about River Ridge this week. And maybe that's a little arrogant to say, for lack of a better term. I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, this will be a good game, and I don't see it being a blowout. I just think that River Ridge winning by 13-14 is probably a healthy expectation.
Yeah, I agree, Coop. I've got I won't go into my spreads this week. You'll have to read them on the website, but I like that number.
Yeah. So, again, NorthGASportsNetwork.com. If you want to read the previews there, that's where you'll be able to find those. And then if you're not able to make it down to Hillgrove, again, this game will be at Hillgrove. Make sure you join us Friday night on the Station Head app and stationhead.com. We'll be providing score updates throughout the night as we'll be covering Cambridge and Creekview. So, want to get your high school football fix, come join us on a Friday night and tune in on the app and tap in and ask your questions in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. Doesn't have to be about the game we're at. We can answer any question.
Absolutely.
If you want to ask us a really random thing we said about on the podcast, ask away.
Hold our feet to the fire. We're there for the taking.
Exactly. We are men of the people.
Yes.
I think I've used that phrase a lot.
Yes, we are.
But I stand by it. So, all right, let's move on to Sequoia now. Sequoia, this is the frustrating part about Sequoia is that their out-of-region schedule is so stacked that when you looked at last year, they were able to find a way to get to 5-5. But did they do it in a way that made you feel good? Not really. It's kind of the inverse of what Etowah did. Etowah last year started out 4-0 and looked so good, and then Sequoia, he just kind of like, man, can y'all win a game? Well, let's go back and review the scrimmage before we get into the game coming up on Friday. 10-23 was the final, but it was 10-6 at the half. Sequoia was up. Looked to me like Sequoia of old. You're kind of getting the same guard coming back in. Tewo Ogundele, Jackson Hancock, Bretton Darling, add them to the list. I think they have 6 returners on defense. They did their job. You held Denmark to 6, which is a 7-8 team. That'll work every day of the week. And on the turn side, they did only score 10, but I thought that Colby Martin specifically looked a lot better. Mm-hmm. And Jackson Hancock did not play both ways, if I remember correctly. I didn't remember seeing him on the offensive side of the ball. So you got to remember that's an X factor that you could bring in if you need to. Couple of big notes. Ian Mariah looked like he was back. He played that fullback, tight end, slot, whatever they use in that offense. I don't know what the term they use. That's a big deal because he is a play-making machine. We saw him in the playoffs, and he was unbelievable. And then on the outside, Tyler Bell's going to be the running back, and your receiving core is going to be a little different. They graduated a couple of those guys, and Alex Conti. So we're going to have to look for some younger names there. So offensively, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But that's kind of my takeaway from the scrimmage.
Yeah, I think Sequoia, again, when we talked to Coach Teeter, we talked about a couple of different alignments that Sequoia might be running this fall, running that spread out of the shotgun, and he talked about it. They can still run their buck sweep out of that, and so not much changes. It's just an alignment, maybe to get some different looks, to spring some guys. Coop, you mentioned Tyler Bell, a guy I'm excited to see play. I don't think he's a guy that's going to put up, going to have the 1,000-yard rusher, but I think he can be a guy that's a bell cow for them and really spring them for 4, 5, 6, 7 yards and kind of on quick hitters there on the inside. And you mentioned Hancock, the Missouri signee, or commit, excuse me. Again, he's one of those guys. He can beat you on the offensive side. He can beat you on the defensive side. He can beat you in special teams, and he can serve you popcorn at halftime. I mean, he's just that kind of kid. We didn't even mention their offensive line, a strong unit, I believe, with 3 or 4 guys coming back, including Brady Curl, maybe a guy that can make an argument to be one of the top offensive linemen in the county. Asher Martineau, Dimitri Morris, I believe, is coming back as well for them up front. So that's they've got a unit that's been in this system. And again, you go back and look at the scrimmage at halftime. Coach Buddy's defense is something that we've talked about ad nauseum here on the podcast. And I just think that they got what they wanted out of that scrimmage as a tune-up for a game that they'll probably want back and want badly this week because Lambert got the best of Sequoia last season.
Yeah, and Lambert's a tough customer, all things considered. You talk about that offensive line, just to make this point before we jump back in there. It looks like the only place they're going to be really replacing is the right tackle, and I think Alex Brewer looks like that slot in. We'll see what happens when the season starts, but you mentioned Brady Curl, Martineau, Morris, and Leggetti kind of solidifying that left and center side of the ball. And again, the receivers are going to be totally different. But jumping into the actual game, Sequoia and Lambert, this will be at Lambert this year. 14-41 last year. It was tough. They've only played 3 times head-to-head. Sequoia's won one of those. They'd love to even that series up this week. It's tough. Lambert's a tough customer all the way around. They're athletic. If I remember right, they're bringing back a lot of talent from last year. You just kind of look at Lambert and you say, all right, Lambert is what it is. And you just hope, I think as you're a Sequoia fan, you're hoping for a closer score. Do I think this game's unwinnable? Not even remotely. I think the game's winnable. But I think it's kind of similar to what we were telling Cherokee fans with Cartersville. You kind of look at it and just say, if we compete in this game with that style of competition this early in the season with some younger guys, I'm content with that. So that would be my takeaway of the game, is that you just have to see what Sequoia can do against competition like Lambert, and that will help you determine a lot of things, because we know that out-of-region schedule just really doesn't get any easier.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't get any easier. You mentioned the explosiveness of a team like Lambert. One thing I will mention, their quarterback, James Tyre, who was kind of a do-everything guy, a dual threat, beat you with his arm and with his legs. He's gone, and I'm sure that Sequoia is glad they won't be chasing him around. You mentioned the experience they return at skill positions, especially in running back. They've got a trio of guys that combine Cam Bland, Ethan Terry, and Tommy Lafayette. I'm not sure how he pronounces it. But anyway, those guys combined for 1,500 yards and 19 touchdowns last season. And then also Christian Smith, that receiver, comes back with 16 catches for 253 yards and four TDs a year ago. So experience with those guys. And I think Lambert's going to rely more on the ground game. That's going to test Sequoia's defense and Coach Buddy and how they defend that. Will they start a mobile quarterback that I don't think he'll have the experience that Tyre did last year, so that's a plus for Sequoia coming into this week.
Yeah, anytime you can get an inexperienced quarterback in that first game, especially when you have a defense like Sequoia, it's certainly an equalizer. And I think Sequoia, for the first time in a while, has an experienced quarterback coming back. Now, obviously, when you're talking about Colby Martin, he's not he hasn't had a full season under his belt necessarily, but he's more experienced than a lot of other competition you're going to be seeing this year. So I think that's a benefit, even if he is just a sophomore. You can take that and understand that. And again, the offensive line's returning a lot of pieces. That's a big part. And then, the running back room, Tyler Bell, we talked about Ian Mariah, I believe Eli Jorgensen's back again this year. When you get those guys back in that system that understand it and have worked on it all summer, it lends itself to allowing for games like this to be a little closer than you would think.
Yeah, it does. One thing I want to point out, Lambert, we haven't talked about them defensively. You talked about Martin for Sequoia, just his experience. He's going to be facing a defense that returns a pretty special player in Branson Brooks, a linebacker, 63 total tackles last year, but led the team with 10.5 sacks. Jeez. Again, I know that Sequoia is not dropping back and throwing, 27 times a game, but I think having somebody there that can key in on that quarterback, and will Lambert be able to play assignment football? They did last year very well. Again, and this was a Sequoia team that still had question marks going into to last season at the quarterback position. So I think this is a game. Can Sequoia go out there, and are they going to be a team that outscores everybody this season? I highly doubt that. I don't see.
If they outscore, it'll be because of the defense.
Well, sure, and from that perspective, but are they going to beat somebody? Are they going to be involved in games that are 42 to 39 or something like that? I don't think that's the makeup of this team. They're going to have to rely on that defense and then do just enough. I think if they can get to 24, 27 points a game, I think Sequoia's going to be really happy about how this season turned out. And if they can get to 27, 28 points this week, I think they'll be really happy about how the game turns out.
Oh, for sure. I think that if you can get to that, I would say the magic number for them is 21 or so normally. Mm-hmm. Now with Lambert, it might be a little higher than that. You don't really know what Lambert's going to come out with. But I think that the 21 number that you put out there is probably pretty darn good. I think if you can hold Lambert to 28, that's probably a win there. So, again, just incremental improvements, what you're looking for in this point in the season, because you don't think about it, but 14-41 last year, you lose a game 28-21 in that same fashion. That's so much better in preparing you for games down the road that you lost last year, like the Allatoona game, that obviously Allatoona is not going to be the same, but you know what I mean. It's going to put you in a different space. It should put you in an upper echelon of conversation, I would say. So I think for the Chiefs, that's maybe that's a little political answer. I don't know. again, I think that you're content with understanding that Lambert is Lambert, and whatever happens because of that is what happens.
I agree, and it should be a good one. I think this game is going to be much closer this season for all the points that we've already touched on. Experience at quarterback, playmakers, and a pretty darn good defense at Sequoia.
Absolutely. So if you're not able to make it down to Lambert, again, this game at Lambert, come join us on the Station Head app and stationhead.com. We'll be live streaming the Creekview Cambridge game. You can listen in and hope that Creekview gets beat if you're a Sequoia fan. And you can, of course, hang out with us. We'll have score updates on all the games in Cherokee County, including Sequoia and Lambert. So make sure you hang out with us. Again, Station Head app and stationhead.com. Moving on to the Woodstock Wolverines, if you are ready, Art.
I am ready, Coop. Most times I would say I was born ready. I would say that when I was younger. As I get a little older, I don't know if that's how true that is.
Well, you were born ready, and now that you're older, you've gotten out of the ready. You have to prepare yourself.
I do have to. There's a lot of preparation going on these days, Will.
Well, hopefully, speaking of people that put in a lot of preparation, the Woodstock Wolverines will be one of those teams because they've had a week off in between their scrimmage and the first week. Again, you and I, off the record, went out to Woodstock and watched them play Cambridge, which, again, we'll see them on Friday night. Woodstock looked great, all things considered. You kind of go home and you think, did I think they looked great because it was Woodstock? No, they look good, just looked good, straight up looked good.
Yeah, they look good. Their energy was good. It was just a different energy out there on Friday, August 4th.
Yep.
Gosh, days are getting so far removed from me now. There was just something different being in there. The excitement alone, they were just fired up. Every play they made, they were locked in, bought in, and it seemed focused. And Coach Devine has re-energized that program, and they were able to. It was a scrimmage. We probably didn't see the entire playbook. But they drew up plays that were great for Lynch to make some catchable balls.
Oh yeah, I was very impressed with Lynch.
Took some shots deep, down the field that we're like, okay, he's got a serviceable arm over there, and again, I think seems like out of nowhere they're guys we saw last year, but Cam Levitt, in the Washingtons, Tate and Nate. Up front, we were kind of like, wow, they have some pieces. I don't know. My question right now for Woodstock is depth. We saw them, in the varsity portion of that scrimmage. They won that 17-14 or whatever that final was, or
something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Or 21-17. I can't remember exactly what it was. They win they come out with a victory. And again, we talked about it. Well, it was just we know it was just a scrimmage, but they needed that. We felt like they needed that energy of a victory to learn how to win. And we even talked to Coach Devine about that. We've got to change some things, and learning how to win is that, the big step. They did that in the scrimmage. Now they've got live bullets, and they've got to, I almost feel like it's payback because Osborne whipped them pretty good last season.
Yeah, they did, and I think a couple things I would add is that I thought Peyton Lynch's arm was more than serviceable. I thought it was good. I thought it was probably above what you're used to seeing at the high school level. So I like him moving forward. And again, this is a guy that you would think that emotionally is just raring to go. I mean, he's
yes.
We heard about him as a sophomore, and he's been through 3 head coaches in the 4 years he's been there. I think this is a kid that's just ready to take the reins and just really kind of get after it. So I'm excited to see Peyton, now that he's got the keys in his hand. What does he do with it? And then the rest of the supporting cast, you mentioned the offensive line did really a pretty good job against a Cambridge defensive line. Chase Kalina had a nice touchdown grab in there. I know Luke Renninger's back this year. The running back room, still, I'm not exactly sure where they're going with that. Isaiah Payton, Tobias Sally, I'm not sure exactly who's getting what. Elijah Wadsworth was a guy that was a big part of that scrimmage that I think could be utilized a lot. And then on the other side of the ball, we talk about Burmeister, he's a machine.
He is a tackling machine. Yes.
He's unbelievable. And then, the secondary we were sitting there watching. The secondary's big.
They are big.
Tyler Barbera, he's a big kid. They've got some big pieces on that side of the ball that they could really start to get in places to frustrate people. I don't think this is going to be an 0-10 Woodstock team. Now, look, does that mean that they go down and beat Osborne? I'm not necessarily saying that. This is going to be their first live action under a new head coach. There's a lot to that. But what I am saying is that are they going to lose 7-46? I would highly, 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 highly doubt that.
No, I agree, Coop. Again, Osborne, a team that learned how to win last year. It was one of the surprise teams in the state of Georgia. Now, once they got to region play, they ran into a couple of buzzsaws, and that was to be expected in that region with North Cobb and Walton and the likes of even Cherokee, Kennesaw Mountain, and Wheeler even last season. So I think this game is going to be closer. Osborne graduated a couple pieces, Khalif Waiters or Walters, running back, and then Josh Horton, wide receiver, who was very impressive. They do bring back their starting quarterback, Eddie Burr. They might call him Deuce down there. He threw for about a little over 1,000 yards in the stats I had, 15 touchdowns. Not a whole lot of yards rushing for Osborne. So I think this is a game that you kind of take away the pass and get some pressure on Burr, force him into some bad passes. And this is a game I think Woodstock will be in the fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah, I think for sure. Again, I think that they may end up losing the game. I just don't think that it's going to be by as much as it was last year for sure. And I think that it could lend itself to a pretty good game by the end of it. I don't know. I don't want to set expectations too high. But what we saw from the team in the scrimmage, and again, it's a scrimmage, but there's some intangibles there that they did very well. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, you talk about the energy. You talk about their effort. It was there. I mean, they were physical. They were ready to get it. And I think that they have some size and some positions that you need it. And if you're going to play physical ball, they've got the opportunity to upset some people. So I don't think if they beat Osborne, it'd be an upset. Woodstock is at home for this one, so that's a benefit for them at the Woodshed. So I'm not entirely sure that you would call it an upset, but I think at the end of the day, the fact that it's Woodstock getting a win for the first time in 22 games would be enough of a storyline to make the podcast next week a lot of fun.
Well, I'm looking at my predictions, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not picking Woodstock, so I am going to
call it an upset.
I'm going to call it an upset, and I'm going to officially, even though I didn't pick them, I'm putting Osborne on upset alert.
Oh, yeah, if there's a team in week one that's possible upset alert, this would be one of them for sure if you view it that way. And again, they may not end up winning it. That's kind of besides the point. You're just looking for improvement. When you're completely rebuilding a program from the top down like Coach Devine is at Woodstock, you just want to see effort. You just want to see some improvement week over week over week. And, just like we talked about with Cherokee even last year, who's not really rebuilding. They were just replacing. But you got to the end of the season, and Week 10 Cherokee would have beat Week 1 Cherokee by 28 points.
Sure, just a different team.
Right, and I think that if you say that about Woodstock this year, then you're going to do it while they've won a few games.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my message to Woodstock fans is there's a lot of excitement, and again, I think there's a lot of joy in watching a team rebuild, especially with those younger guys that kind of develop. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Woodstock fan, maybe you should make it out to the Woodshed at some point.
I absolutely agree. They're going to get somebody this season, and it might be week one.
I agree. So if you're not able to make it over to Woodstock, you can listen to us again on the Station Head app, stationhead.com. North GA Sportsnet is our account. You can tune in and listen to us, and we will have score updates throughout the night, including full breakdowns on the halftime and postgame show. So make sure you join us on there. And other than that, Art, I am just excited to see what Woodstock can do.
I am too. Again, we talked about the energy. You and I were there to witness it. It's great when all of our county teams have some success, and it looks like the future is bright over there off of Town Lake Parkway.
Well, as we are transitioning into Creekview, we do have a phone call coming in. Coach Trevor Williams calling in now. Let's talk to him. Joining us now is the head coach of the Creekview Grizzlies, Coach Trevor Williams. Coach, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, as always, for having me, guys.
Absolutely, Coach. Looking forward to seeing your team on Friday, but before we get to Friday, let's take a look back at the scrimmage. It seemed like your offense was able to find its footing after a couple of drives. What did you see from your team last Friday that you liked on that side of the ball?
Yeah, guys made plays. It was nice to have some explosive plays. It was nice to have Cal Schubert, Michael Roach back healthy after some injuries last year. I thought the quarterback saw the defense well, and I thought the offensive line did a nice job of establishing the run game early.
Coach, maybe you answered this question with my question with your last answer there, but outside of walking away, what we thought no one sustained any serious injuries in the scrimmage, what was the most encouraging thing that you took away or your team took away from last Friday night?
I think when you can turn the film on and have bright spots to coach off of here's what it looks like when it's done the right way, and then here's what it looks like when it's done the wrong way, and you can kind of compare and contrast. I think that's always a positive in a scrimmage situation because you have things you can grow from and learn from, but you also have a taste of what it looks like when it goes well.
Well, Coach, not that anyone needs any more motivation heading into week one, and certainly not when it's at the Grizzly Den, but hosting this game, you guys have played Cambridge every year since 2012. Do you think that adds to the gravity of this game, and has that kind of turned into a rivalry for Creekview?
I don't know if it's a rivalry, but it's definitely historical. I think both communities look forward to the game. I think, it's closer than a lot of people realize. It's North Fulton County, but it may be closer to us than any of the county schools as the crow flies. So I think that's always good. And then, they've been really competitive here over the last 5 years since I've been at Creekview. And, obviously Coach Bennett over there does a great job, and they've had really good teams the last couple of years. So it'll be a great test to start the season for us.
Coach, you talked about those last couple of years, and it's Cambridge has won those last two games, last 2 years. What did you see out of them the last 2 years, and then watching them on film or what little film you've got of them so far this season? What concerns you on Friday night, and what do you think it's going to take for you guys to come out on top to start the season off with the win?
Yeah, it starts with them offensively with the quarterback. He's dynamic with his feet and with his arm. They've got playmakers on the outside. They've got a really explosive running back. I think everybody in the state knows about their left guard, Gabe Smith, who big 6'5", 300-pounder. So they present a lot of challenges offensively. And then defensively, they'll base out of the 3-3 stack, and they move around really well. They bring pressure. They hide looks in the secondary. So the big thing for us early in the season is just execute the game plan, do your job, block your rules, and make sure you're sound in everything you do.
Coach, we're wrapping up here, and folks, we're wrapping up here with Coach Trevor Williams, the head coach of the Creekview Grizzlies. Coach, Friday night, Monday, I don't know what I'm thinking here. Friday night is senior night. You'll be honoring your seniors. Tell us a little bit about this senior class, what they've meant to you. I know you've got some guys that have logged a lot of minutes in the Creekview football program, but can you just talk about maybe the class as a whole, and if you want to spotlight somebody, we'll give you that opportunity as well.
Yeah, it's probably one of the closest groups that I've ever coached. Got to meet these guys when they were in 8th grade. They've been successful all the way from when they were little kids. So very close group, very, very tight bond. And I think we counted 10 of them that are still here that played in the playoff game against Carrollton a couple years ago. So they've logged a lot of minutes. They played a lot of football, and we're counting on those guys to kind of lead the way and show some of these younger guys the ropes as the season goes on.
Well, Coach, we do appreciate you spending some time with us this evening as you get ready to get the 2023 season underway. As you mentioned, a very impressive senior class. We're excited to be out there to take this game in, and we wish you the best of luck on Friday night. And as always, we thank you for joining us on the North Georgia Sports Network and the North Georgia Sports Report. Yes, sir. Thanks, guys, for having me. We can't wait to see you on Friday.
Excellent interview there with Coach Williams. Always a pleasure to talk to him. One of the most consistent interviews. It never seems like he gets too high, too low, kind of always that same. He's not boring. He's energetic.
Even keel. But he's
even
just,
keel,
yeah.
He's excitable, but he's not. Let me play it like this. After a loss, it never seems like he's really that far down.
Right.
He always seems up. He's just never that far down. That's the more accurate way to put it. So because we have a few minutes here, we do have a special guest coming up in a minute. So let's talk about Creekview's scrimmage against Cherokee, a game they won 28-14. Obviously, there was a little bit of back and forth there. We talked about it in the Cherokee segment. Ended up when the starters were pulled, it was 14-14, but Creekview was ahead 14-0 at one point off a couple of touchdown grabs, one from Roach and one from Jackson Stanley. Austin Guest looked pretty good. The Creekview offense found its footing after a real slippery start. So I was really impressed with seeing Creekview there. And to me, Creekview's defense did what Creekview's defense does. They were very impressive. And Cherokee was only able to move the ball effectively against them when it came to some big pass and grab opportunities. So the secondary may be something that Creekview wants to keep an eye on. But other than that, what was your takeaway of the Creekview scrimmage?
I thought offensively, they wanted to establish the run game. We saw them use all 4 backs. I thought that looked pretty good. I also thought Austin Guest looked really good running the ball. It looked like he had better command of the offense this season. It's his second year as a starter. He's gotten more comfortable. And like Coach Williams said, the receivers are healthy.
Yes.
And that certainly helps a lot when your playmakers are healthy. And you mentioned Jackson Stanley. I was very impressed with him. He looks like he could develop into a go-to type player. We talked offline about the size of some of their third and fourth options, and Vaccaro and Ajamang. Those kids didn't get a ton of balls thrown their way in the scrimmage, but just looking at them, we're like, wait, hey, if we need to get a jump ball in there, we've got some guys that we can throw it to up there. But I was impressed with that. Defensively, I thought Creekview's defense maybe a little sluggish to start the game. When they woke up in a big way. I tell you what, they've got a thumper in the middle. Reed Anderson might be my favorite, football player in Cherokee County. He's just kind of got that old, feel like he's got that old school mentality, like Dick Butkus type player, man, just a fun player to watch in there as he's kind of the quarterback of that defense.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the rest of the team rallies around him. Creekview's defense did put up 3 sacks in the first half. That was nice to see. One off Griffin Jane, one off Trey Thomas, and I believe one off of Reed Anderson was the last one. So good production there. That was kind of a knock on the Grizzlies last year, was that defensive line was not as solid as we are used to seeing. And I think they've solidified that position a decent bit. The linebacking core looked athletic and good. And the secondary, again, all things considered, I was impressed with them. So I think that this Creekview defense is going to be a Creekview defense. It's going to be the Creekview defense that we've come to expect over the last forever.
Yeah, just a defense that continues to attack and puts pressure on the quarterback, puts pressure on the the opposing offensive coordinator, because they're coming downhill and they're coming at you hard each and every down. And you're not gonna let that quarterback be too comfortable in the pocket. And we saw that with Savasier as they were able to make some plays. You mentioned the 3 sacks in that one half of play. So much to be seen, but I think if you're walking away from that, number one, like most teams, I don't believe we had any significant injuries in scrimmages. So number one, everybody was healthy walking away from that. Number two, okay, the offense is getting to the line of scrimmage a little bit quicker. They look like they're in a little bit more of a rhythm. And again, I think the game situations, time and score will dictate that going forward. But I felt like didn't see a ton of procedure penalties from Creekview in this scrimmage.
Yeah, there were a few, but they were clean upable. That's a word. But they were fixable. And they weren't all the false start, jump off sides. As a matter of fact, it was more neutral zone infractions on the defense than anything.
Right.
Which, again, that happened when the starters were pulled. That was not a starter issue. So that's something that those young guys just have to work out. I think it was on the corners, too, which is always the hard part,
right?
Because it's like that receiver's 2 yards away from me. That's not how it's supposed to be. Well, he's in the backfield. But anyway, I liked what I saw from Creekview. Am I willing to move them anywhere in the power ranking? I had them at 5. No. Just again,
you want to talk about that? Explain why you had them at. I'm just kidding, Q.
I mean, I will. Gotta win an away game. That's pretty simple. For
they
me.
won this away scrimmage.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was tied at the end of the starters, so define winning.
Well, it's a scrimmage, so it doesn't count.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, but yes, I understand. But and again, I think if you didn't hear our preseason show, we kind of joke about the power rankings at this point because it is just a joke. 3, 4, and 5, Etowah, River Ridge, and Creekview are like so razor margin thin away from each other that it's almost indistinguishable. And it's going to be up to one of the 3 or 2 of the 3 to distinguish themselves from the others. I completely agree. Almost interchangeable at that point. And but live bullets fly this Friday night. We'll be there. And before we get there, I think we have someone on the phone, a special guest
First time in our history speaking to this coach, and we're excited to have him on. Coach Bennett is joining us, and I think we're about to get him on.
Joining us now is the head coach of the Cambridge Bears, Coach Craig Bennett. Coach, thank you for being with us.
So thank you again for this opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely, Coach. Looking forward to talking to you. We've seen a lot of Cambridge over the years, and looking forward to talk about your team. And we talk about how much we've seen your team. And you guys have made and won a playoff game each of the last 3 years, which is a big deal. And you include a region title in that last season. What would you say has been your biggest key to success recently in that Cambridge program?
The two things to me that stand out is we had some really good kids, some good classes that stacked up back to back, and then a consistency within our staff, the key to our success.
Coach, you talk about success. One of the things that we like to talk about here in Cherokee County is I feel like we've had a run of great offensive linemen. And looking over at your team over the last couple of years, you've got a couple of good ones in Gabe Chigwiri, and excuse me if I'm mispronouncing his name, and then Gabe Smith. How have they grown up in your program, and how will you lean on them this season as what looks like a kind of a youthful team this year coming up with a lot of experience graduating over the last couple of years?
Yes, sir, no doubt. Something we're very proud of, that both kids played in our feeder program, as well as all, I think, 27 of our seniors last year played in our feeder program. So that's something that, I think Cherokee County does a tremendous job with as well. As those kids grow up in the program. And so we're proud of that too. And so those two young men have obviously done a really, really good job. And both are really good people, first and foremost. And have really just bought into the way we do things. And they understand that, our success has been driven by our offensive line, to be honest with you. And so they know how important they are, and we make them feel that way. And, we tell them every day we're going to go like with you guys. So I think that helps a lot in helping their sense of pride that they've helped establish this little bit of success that we've had.
Coach, as we look forward to this game on Friday, Creekview and Cambridge have played each other every year since Cambridge has opened in 2012. You've been fortunate enough to be on that sideline for all 11 of those previous meetings. Do you view this game as a rivalry?
You know what? I would say yes, but man, they've gotten the best of us most of those 11 years. So to me, it's hard to say it's a rivalry when we lost. 9 in a row or 8 in a row, whatever it was. But so hopefully, in a few years, if we have the opportunity to win a couple more, we might be able to call it a rivalry. But I think it's been a good game because both student sections have done a real good job supporting this game. So that's kind of a lot of energy around it. But we got to win a few more before I can call it a rivalry.
We're on the phone here with Coach Craig Bennett, the head coach of the Cambridge Bears. His Bears will come over to Cherokee County. And a game, I know we're in different counties, but Cambridge probably is close to Creekview as any other school in Cherokee County that Creekview will face. Coach, I want to talk to you about your quarterback, Preston Clemmer. Started last year as a junior, and we mentioned some of his the youth this season, but man, oh man, he had a great group of kids to throw to last year. Tell us about Preston, a guy that we probably don't know much about in the county unless you follow football really closely. Just tell us about him and his development and his leadership and the role you expect him to take with a younger group of players this season.
Yeah, I'll start by saying he's one of the best kids I've had come through my program, and that's everything from the way he carries himself to academics to athletics to just the young man he is. So he's one of the best I've had. I say this all the time in quarterbacks in today's world. He played behind a really good one for 2 years and stayed. And you just don't see that in today's culture. These kids, if they don't play early, they leave. And he bought in and stayed with us. And so to me, that says a lot about who he is and what kind of person he is. But tremendous young man, tremendous athlete. He's had some really, really good players around him the last year. And he's going to have some young ones that he's kind of, he's had to take on a different little role this year. And even last year with all the seniors that we had, he became the leader of the offense. And that was a concern when you have a junior that hasn't started and you got all these seniors. But they kind of rallied around him, and he became their guy. And so that's just kind of the personality he has. They know what a good kid he is, and they're going to fight for him, and he's going to hold them accountable. And just a tremendous young man, and obviously a pretty good little football player too. So.
Yeah, we certainly agree with you. We know about that football part, but we certainly appreciate you letting us in on a little bit more about his personality and the person he is off the field. Coach, we're going to bring the conversation back on the field, and you got a game Friday night. Again, you'll be traveling over to Creekview. I do know that the Creekview faithful will be very glad that Christian Isabor and Marlo will not be joining you this season. But tell us, with the team you're bringing over, what's it going to take to beat Creekview for a third straight year?
Man, I'll tell you, they've always been well coached. They always play extremely hard. And listen, let me tell you something. If they're glad we have those two kids going, I'm glad they have that linebacker. I can't remember his name
Isaac
right
Hubert.
Now. But, oh, my gosh. That young man was the best defensive player I've ever coached against. And I wrote him a couple letters telling him that. So I think our offensive line's glad he's not playing, too, to be honest with you. But – yeah, it's, like I said, they've always done a really, really good job with the kids they have, and they've had some really, really good players, and they coach them well. And those kids play hard. I mean, we've been talking to our kids all week about how physical this game's going to be, how hard they're going to play. And so it's going to take a 4-quarter game to beat this group, and that's just the way this game has kind of always been. They've kind of beat us up a little bit over the years, but they're just well coached and play hard.
Well, Coach, no truer words have been spoken, and again, we appreciate you taking some time. I think the sentiment is echoed as watching your team, your program grow over the course of these 12 or so years. And I think, Will and I, what we notice is that, hey, they're doing this with homegrown kids. And right. I think that's something that is extremely respectable, and it's kind of like slow growth. But I think when you get to that point of that region title you all had last year, when I don't think anybody, not even me, who I pride myself in knowing what's going on, I had no faith in you of beating Kell, and here you go throwing it right in my face. So that is a phenomenal job that you've done with that program, and just establishing a culture with that big senior class last season. So, Coach, again, we appreciate you taking some time with us this afternoon. We wish you a safe and short trip over to Creekview, and we wish you luck on Friday night. We'll be happy. We're glad to be in the stadium having the call on Friday night.
Well, I sure do appreciate it, guys, and thank you for your kind words. And I do have to say one thing. My brother is the AD over there, so
okay.
This is a little bit personal, too, for both of us.
So does the winner of this game, do you get the head seat at the table for Thanksgiving? Is that what's on the line? Or what's
a little bit, not too much. Of course, he, like the years he's been AD, I've said, we've gotten the best of him. So they beat us before he got there. So
doesn't really count.
Leave it at that. Nothing to say about their team or their coaches, just the AD.
That's right. Well, Coach, thank you again so much for being with us, and we look forward to talking to you again soon, and good luck on Friday.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
So a special thank you to Coach Bennett for being with us on the North Georgia Sports Report podcast. Always good to talk to him. I believe it's actually the first time in my career that I've spoken to him in person, but having covered Cambridge over the years, just kind of vicariously through the Creekview games, I've gotten to know him over email, and he's a fantastic individual.
Yeah, great interview. We're glad to have him. Lighthearted, but very informational, and we thank him for his time. It was nice to learn a little bit more about that program, what he's built over there, and you even hear it in his voice, the humility about speaking about his quarterback, Preston Clemmer, his offensive line, the big senior class he had last year. So again, thanks to Coach Bennett, and we hope that we'll tag you guys in here, but we really hope the Cambridge faithful has a chance to listen to the podcast this week, even if it's only this segment.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to hurt our feelings. I doubt anybody at Cambridge cares about River Ridge,
Sure.
Grove.
Sure.
But maybe you do. Maybe you want to know the whole spiel. But yes, welcome if you are listening. And again, a special thank you to Coach Bennett. Excited to see the Cambridge Bears and the Creekview Grizzlies do battle on Friday. We will have that call on Station Head app and the stationhead.com website. So our program is North GA Sportsnet. That's how you can find us there. It is 100% free. So if you haven't made an account yet, go ahead and make an account. It will ask you to link up an Apple Music or Spotify account. 100% not required.
Not required at all. In the upper right-hand corner, you can just skip that, and it'll take you right to the broadcast.
And if you're confused on it at all, visit our website, northgasportsnetwork.com, where you'll be able to find a live tab with a how-to video walking you through the step-by-step download guide, as well as a Follow Us button where you'll be able to be taken directly to our webpage. So with all that being said, now that you know how to find us, let's get you ready for Friday night, which again, Creekview, Cambridge, Battle of the Bears. This is a game that, as Coach Bennett alluded to, Creekview had dominated for the first 9 years of this thing, and then recently it's been all Cambridge. And it's not just been Cambridge by a little bit. They've completely shut out the Grizzlies the last 2 games. So I don't know that that's possible again for a third time. I think if they did, that there'd be a lot of people over on Owen Store Road that are getting a lot of extra gray hairs because of it. But I do think that this game, especially recently, and I asked both coaches, do you think this is rivalry? And they both kind of gave the political answer of,
Sure.
well,
Yeah.
Which is fine. I understand.
Well, it was kind of funny coming from Coach Bennett. He's like, well, we really haven't beaten these guys a whole lot, so it's not really a rivalry. But Coach Bennett, yes, the last 2 years, 35-0 is, is the tally there in favor of Cambridge. So,
pretty impressive.
Yes, very impressive.
And I think his line that he said was "we would, but," which is always funny. It's always like, okay, yeah. But no, I take all that 100%. I understand where he's coming from. I think the key this year, and I think I said this even last year, the exact same way. So I'll just repeat myself because it still holds true. What can the offense do for Creekview? Right? I mean, obviously you don't want to give up 28 to Cambridge this year. I don't think that Creekview will, but Creekview's got to find a way to score some points. They do have the added benefit of being at home, which, again, as people know, last year that home and away split was so day and night. I even think last year by the end we said that Creekview at home would have beaten Creekview away by 20 points was what it ended up being. So all that being said, the thing that's frustrating is Creekview last year had 66 yards passing and 76 yards rushing. All right, the 76 yards rushing you can kind of live with if you have good passing numbers,
Sure.
But you can't live in double digits on both sides of the ball. Cambridge last year only had 36 yards passing with Preston Glimmer. That's impressive. They ran the ball 273 yards and 4 touchdowns. Okay, that against a Creekview defense is almost unheard of. So as much as the offense needs the attention, the defense has got to find a way to keep Cambridge from running the ball effectively.
Well, I tell you what, one good thing for Creekview is that Jack Marlowe and Christian Isabor are no longer they are not getting off that bus this week. And
Yes.
that's, well over 1,500 yards, if I'm not mistaken, of offense between those two. 4 senior receivers gone for Cambridge. So, again, passing wasn't the issue. It was that run defense over there. So you're right. They're going to have to button up. They look pretty good against Cherokee in their run defense. And, the thing with Cambridge is, man, are they going to have anyone who can fill in the void up front? One thing they do have is, as we talked to Coach Bennett about, is those 2 big offensive linemen, the Gabes, very impressive. Coach Williams even spoke about them. They've got some guys to run behind, and so that will present a problem certainly for Creekview. Is how do you attack those 2 big tackles for Cambridge? And so yes, that's a concern. I think the other concern, and Preston Clemmer's improved as a passer over the course of last season and this season as a senior, a recruitable quarterback, a legit recruitable quarterback for Cambridge. But how was he going to deal with inexperience in his receiving core? We talked about maybe a question mark with Creekview secondary and an opportunity for them to shine on Friday night. Could be. I don't know. It's a game to me with a lot of question marks, Coop, because we believe that Creekview is better, and we also understand that Cambridge might be down, but how far down?
Right.
And how much better is Creekview?
Well, I think the question, too, comes, you talk about the inexperienced wide receiving core, the questions in the secondary. I think it's really the offensive line where Gabe Chigwiri and Gabe Smith are those two guys that are going to be anchoring that offensive line versus the defensive line and the linebacking core that did very well against Cherokee. And if that's the dynamic that continues into this game, I like Creekview's chances. Now, offensively, I don't really know, okay? Because here's the thing. Creekview in the scrimmage, did they answer a lot of questions at running back? Internally, maybe they did. To us on the outside, there wasn't a back that really showed up and just kind of said, this is going to be the back from now on.
Right.
Now, in all fairness, Coach Williams told us that would not be the case. He said that they're going to utilize the guys that they need for that specific play. So what does that really mean when it comes to Friday night? Who is that back that they're going to go to on first and second down? Or is it really just four guys rotating in and out? So I don't necessarily know the answer to that. That would be my big question. The other question that I have is the receiving core. So we talked about Michael Roach. We talked about Jackson Stanley. Okay, Roach is a tight end. Jackson Stanley is a receiver. But you mentioned the size of Vaccaro and Agamang on the outside. Where do those two guys fit into this scheme? Can you find a way to get those guys that are 6'4", 6'5" involved downfield vertically? Because we know Austin Guest is going to get his on the ground. We know Austin Guest is going to be able to throw it underneath. But do you have the ability to take the head off of defense? If you do, that opens up running lanes for your running back. Again, a lot of teams pass to run nowadays. They don't run to pass.
Right.
So, to me, that's another question is what does the receiving core look like? I'm cool if you're going to live in the 10-yard, passing game. That's fine with me, but I would love to see them have the ability to throw the ball downfield a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's the next step for the Grizzlies is seeing if they can go vertical. We didn't see a ton of that this Friday. And quite frankly, I don't think we saw a ton of it last season. And not with specific, not with accuracy. They took some shots, but again, with some healthy players coming back, Schubert, Roach, those guys being healthy, it should certainly make for a more efficient, if I could say, passing game. And again, Jackson Stanley, if he can come along, if he's anything like he was last Friday, I think they'll give the Cambridge secondary some fits on Friday night.
Yeah, I think the benefit Creekview has this year over last year is the offensive line has a depth. It seems like they've probably got 6, 7, 8 guys they could rotate in there to utilize where they need them. If you have a guy who's better at run blocking, maybe you bring him in on first and goal. If you have a guy who's better at pass blocking, 3rd and 12,
sure,
they can make that decision internally. But I do think that depth allows you to change the way you format things. And then defensively, I think the same thing. I think they probably have a few defensive ends and a few nose tackles that they could rotate in and out if you find that one of your defensive ends fits more in a 3rd and 8 package and one fits more in a 3rd and 1 package. So I don't know the answer to that. Again, just stuff that maybe Creekview fans want to keep an eye out for. And I think for Cambridge, not to discredit them because we just don't know what they're going to do because putting together the two deeps for these guys, it's like all new. I mean, they got some transfers in, one guy from North Gwinnett and then a guy from Alpharetta that the guy from North Gwinnett's going to play both ways. Josh Richards, I believe is his name. And then Edon Eldora, or I can't remember his name, and I apologize. I'm sure I butchered that, who played running back at Alpharetta. But both of those guys are going to provide something, and then we know Preston Clemmer in the 2 games. But outside of that, I mean, this team is like brand new. We're going to get out there and hear names we haven't heard of before, and Cambridge fans are going to be the same way. So, could Creekview come out here and really put it down on Cambridge? Yeah, but if Cambridge has some diamonds in the young, not in the rough, but in the young, if you will, then this could be a real interesting game really quick.
It certainly could, Coop. We talked about the Gabes over there, and Gabe Smith, I think, is the big recruit over there that's getting most of the attention of those two. But let's look on the other side. You talked about Creekview's offensive line and the depth. 2 of the better offensive linemen in this area, in Smith at Cambridge and then Rosinski for Creekview. But again, you mentioned the depth with the guy like Pearson Sears, Cam Mears, Dylan Bowling, Fernando Zarita, and the list goes on and on for those guys over there at Creekview. So we saw a lot of them rotate in and out, even some of those defensive linemen rotating on the offensive side. I think at this point they're just looking for the best 5 they can put that are going to provide the best result, open up those run lanes, and then provide that pass protection. One thing, and I hope I'm not giving something away, but I love the way that Austin Guest has learned to carry out his play fakes and on those play action pass looks, and even when he's going to tuck that. Very, very deceptive, and I think that's going to help open up some things for Creekview in the passing game.
Yeah, way to go, Art. You ruined the whole game plan now.
Sorry, Coach.
The bootleg passes.
Yeah.
That to me, you mentioned Ethan Spector, and we talk about Tanner Savis here. It seems like every week. I think the thing that differentiates, and the reason we group these three guys together is because they're all going into their junior season. So you kind of just naturally lump them together. But I think the differentiating factor between the three is that Guest is the mobile one, and he is able to throw on the run better, and especially off his offhand, throwing to his weak side, he's able to roll out and throw to that left side a lot better than the others are. And I think because of that, you don't have to have the fantastic offensive line. You just have to make sure that only one guy gets through, because you can run around him.
Right.
So, that also helps a good bit. So I like Creekview. I think that they're going to win. If I had to put a guess out there, I would say that. But are they that far above Cambridge? I don't really know.
Yeah, I think there's just so many questions with Cambridge. And not that Coach Bennett was being coy. I mean, I think he was very honest with us about his team, and we knew that coming in with the youth and of this year's team. Coop, you mentioned the 4 running backs. I think we're missing. There's actually 5, because Guest is probably the best. What I would consider the best dual threat quarterback in the county, with his ability to really lower his shoulder, and he's not out there sliding. He's out there trying to deliver hits.
Well, I think if he didn't have the arm that he had, he would be a running back. I think they would utilize him as that, but I think that when he does throw the ball, the way that he throws the ball, it's hard to take the ball out of his hand.
Yeah.
So, and again, nowadays in high school football, the read option and the design quarterback runs, it's 11 on 11 instead of 11 on 10. You heard coaches talk about it at length. So I like what they're doing with him. I think that he's a key part of that offense. It's kind of interesting. It's not necessarily how he goes, they go, that they can work around that.
Sure.
And sometimes he has good games and they don't perform that well, or at least that was the case last year in my opinion. But I do think that if he has a good game, and especially this Friday, they will come out with a win.
Yeah, I agree. I think Creekview has the edge because of the experience overall. Not necessarily at each individual position, but overall as a group. I think Creekview's offensive line is probably, maybe a hair better than Cambridge's. I think defensive line, I give Creekview the edge. In terms of a pure passer, I think Clemmer gets the edge. But I like Creekview's receivers over Cambridge's, and so I think it'll be a fun game. I think the Grizzly Den will be they'll be excited. We saw them last week. The students were in mid-season form.
Yeah.
In a preseason game. I mean, where else does that happen?
Yeah.
And so I expect a big crowd out there for senior night on Friday night, as we talked to Coach Williams about. And again, Cambridge, it's very close and easy to get to from Cambridge to Creekview. We're talking to 10, 15 minutes down the road. So I expect a healthy crowd on both sides, and I'm expecting a competitive ball game. And I think the Grizzlies have the edge at home.
I agree. So with all that being said, we're inviting you all to join us on a beautiful Friday night, as we're looking forward to have a broadcast team out there for the first time to open up the regular season.
A full broadcast team. We're excited. As Dave Garner will say, a full cast of characters. Coop, just some other games that we'll be keeping an eye on. We want to talk about the other teams in the region, as well as other teams that our region might face. Just some games of interest. Walton will face Grayson in the Corky Kell. On Saturday, we've got Kennesaw Mountain, the Corky Kell as well, another region opponent for Cherokee. They'll be taking on Creekside. North Cobb is taking on Westlake. Wheeler has Centennial. And then we take a look. Roswell and Denmark are also playing just a game of interest. Rome will be facing Cass on Friday in the Corky Kell Classic. And then a crossover region, a couple of games. Even the Forsyth County games, let me get to those. South Forsyth will be playing at Lanier. Allatoona will be playing North Paulding. as I work my way down the list here, we did mention Denmark and Roswell. So just a ton of games. You got North Forsyth and West Forsyth playing the Corky Kell on Thursday when this comes out. So those games will have already gone final at the time of when we broadcast on Friday. And then again, across North Georgia, across the state, some fantastic games. One I'm really looking forward to that has no bearing on anything that we do is Carrollton and Langston Hughes playing at Carrollton. Two of the state's top quarterbacks, Juju Lewis for Carrollton and then Prentice Air Noland over there at Langston Hughes. Ought to be a fantastic matchup.
Did you say who Buford was playing?
Who cares? Did I say that out loud? Yeah, Buford, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek here, but Buford bringing in the nation's number one quarterback, Dylan Raiola, a fantastic player. I'm sure they'll be able to plug and play. I did not include Buford. They are in our crossover for Region 5, Class 7A. So that is certainly a region that we'll keep an eye on. I cannot remember off the top of my head.
It really doesn't matter. They're going to win.
Buford is Buford. We will keep an eye on Region 8 over there in Class 7A as that is our crossover, as we will with Region 7 in Class 6A. And then again, some of the smaller schools we'll be taking a look at Class 3A, Class 4A, just in the area of our coverage area. Maybe a game not of interest to our listeners, but one of the oldest rivalries. Gordon Lee's playing at Tryon up there in Northwest Georgia. Tryon's got a pretty good running back. I expect them to win that game handily there. But again, one of the older rivalries, I believe, over 100 games played in that series, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah.
Plenty of history.
Football is back, Coop, man.
Hey.
I'm pumped up. I could run through like 30 more games. We're not going to do it. We don't want to bore our fan base here, but we do want to thank everybody for listening, downloading, and sharing with what we're doing. Again, our mission again is to just make sure we're giving these young men a platform to be noticed and shared, and hopefully they can shine. We can help their star shine bright.
That's all we're here for, is to help promote and highlight the kids in the programs of Cherokee County and the surrounding areas. And we're looking forward to seeing you all on a beautiful Friday night at the Grizzly Den with a full cast of characters, as Dave Garner would say. I've been Will Cooper along with Arthur Mosley, inviting you all to join us for the Battle of Bears on the Friday night broadcast, stationhead.com, the Station Head app. Thank you so much, everyone.